So as has become a common staple of these summits and as a discussion is that we're going to be talking about the new theme again. And then hopefully we can figure out some solutions to get this thing ready for VuFind's now version 10, if Damien's presentation is to be believed. So I just wanted to touch on a few things before we go into the road mapping, since it does seem like it'll be focused a lot around this theme. I want to touch on what my desired user experience is, at least one part of it. I want to talk a bit about what dev experience I want to bring to the new theme. And I want to talk about the things that make the problem of progress, the problem that makes it feel like the theme isn't happening, what has kept us back from doing our big major release for, I think, 2 versions now. So without further ado, I wanted to talk about one of my ideas that I have for the user experience, for people who are customizing a theme, but not necessarily fully developing a theme. This is also in response to questions that came up yesterday about upgrading to Bootstrap 5 and things like that. Is I think VuFind would, the new VuFind theme would be do very well to rely on a bunch of smaller mixins that can customize the experience and allow people to use it. This also touches on an idea from, I think, last year or the year before that, about having a gallery on VuFind.org of different themes that people can pull down and then use or base their themes off of. So for example, you start with the basic Bootstrap, and then maybe you add a mixin that changes the way the buttons look, and then maybe you add a mixin that changes the way the headers look, and then maybe you really want to have a dark theme, so there's a mixin that does some kind of dark mode on top of everything like that. Just adding in and organizing different mixins to create a more curated experience. So things like icons would be a very easy thing for this. Actually, I have a few icon mixins I developed alongside the icon helper that are already working. This is where something like a Bootstrap 5 mixin would come in, where it takes all of the classes and all of the buttons, and using Sass's extend or Less's extend functionality puts those Bootstrap styles back on there, and then also puts in the Bootstrap JavaScript to bring in that accessibility and things. And that could be done for other popular frameworks such as Foundation, as an example. I think this would be a really good way to change homepage layouts without too much interruption and change header layouts. A few years ago, there was a lot of talk and a lot of work about having a full width header versus the container header, having the search box up in line with the header or having the search box below. And there was a lot of really clever solutions around that, but it might be simpler to offer different mixins that just change that template. And this will be more popular because the new theme, I really want to have more granular templates. So changing just parts of the header like that will be much easier. Speaking of more granular templates, the dev experience, we've talked in several developer calls and things like that about organizing things around organisms, molecules, and atoms. This isn't a new idea, but breaking things down to a level of granularity will make customizing VuFind much easier. Because, for example, the layout file that we have right now is a very large file with a lot of changes in it, and tweaking that file makes it very difficult to keep it up to date with VuFind in the future. As previously discussed, it seems that the way that we want to go is to have components like the menu buttons or the drop downs or the nav bars to have their own plain PHP and vanilla JavaScript kept separately in their own folder together. And this is based very heavily, and thank you very much, on Finna's component library and other component libraries that have been sent to me. This seems to be the way that we want to go forward. And there's a pull request that kind of demonstrates this up on GitHub right now. There's been a call to have new build tools. Grunt is outdated and no longer used and is no longer close to the top rated or top adopted models. Maybe just using package JSON scripts would allow for a lot more flexibility. And I do want to talk about having a unified CSS experience. It seems to me, my hopes and dreams for this were dashed when I discovered that Post CSS doesn't actually parse less in Sass. So keeping the current experience, but letting people pick their own flavor has unfortunately been dashed. So it seems like perhaps, and as a discussion point to start to get into things, maybe switching to SaaS alone for the VuFind development might do the least harm. We do have a Less to SaaS tool that works fairly well, and SaaS seems to be the more widely used and supported tool. But that's the kind of nitty-gritty things that we need, that will come up in the road mapping, and I'm sure in other discussions online. So what the problem with progress is, why we haven't had the new themes, that we've been focusing on these atoms. If we're building out the new theme and we've started with the leaves and the smaller parts, like there's been a lot of excellent work, I'll admit, long running work on the icon helpers, the link helpers, getting some example components going, bringing together and building all the small tools that are going to, once combined to a new theme, are going to give it the full, easily customizable, accessible experience that we're all really hoping for. And we've also been talking about the roots a lot, what the build tools are like, what the dev experience is like. Unfortunately, those things it seemed necessary to minimize effort and maximize impact. We didn't want to build out a whole new theme and then add a bunch of helpers and have to backfit it to 2 different themes. The work in Bootstrap alone is already a lot of work and has been part of why these helpers haven't been done. So doing that for 2 themes seems to be the way to go. But the catch-22 here is that without a new full scaffold to build on, it's made collaboration very difficult. It's been hard to see what still needs to be done. It's been hard to give feedback on the ideas because a lot of the very important factors have kind of remained a theory. So to transition us into a conversation, and as Damien said at the start of this conference in the state of the project, new theme logistics is going to be a major factor for the development of VuFind version 9 and VuFind version 10, and getting this major theme finally completed and out the door. There's a lot to discuss here. Are mix-ins, the way that I envision them, the way to go? Damien and I have been doing some very casual performance testing and haven't run into any issues, but who knows if someone wants to put 20 mix-ins, if it's not going to cause more problems and conflicts. Should we continue to focus on the atoms and the roots, or should we build a scaffold first? Maybe the lean theme that was just presented, which was very exciting to me, might be something to look at and maybe something to build on and see if we can improve that to bring the lean theme out back to the full functionality, but keep all that good work there of upgrading things and making them modern and responsive. Or do we want to hammer out the dev stack first and make sure we have all the build tools in place and the full support is in place? There's just a lot of different ways that we can go from here. And so the road mapping begins here with the discussion. This is the biggest feature that has been a bottleneck and also been talked about the most in the previous years, and we are all very excited to get this over the finish line. So I have the link here on the slide, tinyurl.com/VuFind2022 is the link that we've been using to get to the document, and on that the conference planning document, and in the middle of that document is the road mapping section.